Guide the spirit. The waves of conversation ebb and flow about oxytocin. They sit in the shade of a spreading tree and listen. Not for the first time, they consider how odd it is that their people, united by faith, speak with so many different voices. Not just the languages. Each coiling vine of the Suma people is proud of their own tongue, and perhaps in a way that explains why there has never been a serious drive to put one above the others. It can make life difficult at times, but then, as some philosophers say, difficulty breeds virtue. Their lip quirks in a half smile at the idea. Pride lies in a job well done, no matter how challenging it was, arguably. They shift slightly. It has been a long debate, and even with the shade, the day is warm and the flies are busy. Danius and Zenlake have been throwing the same point back and forth between them for the last half hour. On cue, the Cardinal stands to remind her fellows that wisdom says 4 words are better than 40. The two mutter and grumble, but it is clear the assembly is not on their side. There is discussion about whether a judgment shall be raised, and Danius announces that they intend to raise a statement, regardless of what Zenlake might think, and the argument starts again. Voices rise and fall, but Oxytocin spots an opening and stands up. People turn their faces towards them, and in measured tones they explain again that there is surely no insult here. The Cassinian House of the People are no less busy than their Suma peers. The offer from Ambassador Accolon is sincere, and the Assembly should assume good faith in this matter. They could argue until sunset, but it will not change the fact that they were in the wrong, and it will not change the fact that appropriate recompense must be given. The only important thing is to avoid the appearance of corruption after all. They smooth their rainbow skirts as they sit back down on the bench and lean back against the rough bark of the old tree. At first it looks like the discussion is over, but Zenlake is not done, and Danius will not yield, and their supporters back them up, and everyone else is held ransom to their rivalry. Up above, in the branches of the tree, Oxytocin spies 2 little monkeys arguing over figs. It almost raises a smile. The comparison between the small, impassioned animals and the 2 devout praester is simply too apt, too pat. But there is nobody they can share it with, not without risking offending one of their colleagues. And so the day draws on, and the debate continues. Suma Republic. Status, foreigner. Ports, Zeme. Ambassador, Accolon of Highguard. Overview. Each season, the civil service prepares a summary of the Empire's relationship with the foreign nations, based on communications received from their ambassador, along with any useful intelligence gathered from other sources. While the Senate and the other houses of imperial power may respond to these offers, it is important to note that it is the appropriate ambassador that the foreign power will expect to hear from. Their communication with the foreign power is the primary element that will determine the tenor of any response. Among the 6 great powers, the Suma Republic are simultaneously rivals to and uneasy allies of the Empire. Their shared practice of the way both unites them through virtue and divides them through disagreements about how the faith should be practiced and spread. States of play. The Suma Republic is a member of the Liberty Pact, friendly with the Empire and the Commonwealth, and at war with the Asavean Archipelago. Relations between the Empire and the Suma Republic are stable at present. Thanks to the Liberty Pact, the 2 nations are allies, at least in their shared opposition to slavery. After decades of friction between the Imperial Synod and the Suma Houses of the Way over their shared faith, an amicable split has seen the 2 nations each commit themselves to their own vision of spirituality. For the most part, while this has led to an increase in rivalry, it has reduced the animosity between pilgrims who look to Bastion and those who look to Timaj for guidance. The Suma ambassador to the Empire is Oxytocin, censor of wood, metal and stone of the High House of Pride. They are a priest, one of the Suma praester, and by all accounts a devout dedicate of Pride, but they also report to the House of the People, the Suma equivalent of the Imperial Senate. They tend to be forthright and straightforward in their approach to the Empire, but as might be expected from a nation so profoundly influenced by the virtues, they are as concerned with spiritual matters as they are those of diplomacy and trade. The Liberty Pact. The Suma Republic are signatories to and founder members of the Liberty Pact. While relations in general remain good, there was significant disappointment following the latest meeting of the Liberty Pact. The Suma were keen to drop the nation of Axos from the pact, arguing that the pact would be more decisive if it was led by Suma, the Empire, and the Commonwealth. Ambassador Oxytocin is careful to explain that it is not simply that the Suma don't like the heretical blasphemers of Axos. although everything that Suma learns about Aksu's spirituality makes them despise the small nation even more. Rather, their suspicion of the nation was confirmed when they discovered that the magicians had allied with the Grendel slavers to attack Sark. This is not to say that the Suma have any particular affection for or knowledge of Sark. Indeed, Oxytocin seems broadly unaware of and largely indifferent to the nation itself. Instead, the Suma ambassador questions how any nation can be sincere about the commitment to ending slavery while making alliances with slavers when it suits them. The general Suma view is that the Empire knows Axos best, and that it would be better for everyone if the Empire dealt with the Aksu, preferably by conquering them and eliminating their profoundly unsettling faith, and left the Commonwealth and the Suma to do likewise with their own neighbours. The Empire's decision to defend Axos' right to be party to the treaty may have been essential to salvage any hope of diplomatic friendship with the smaller nation, but it has come at the cost of reducing Suma support for the pact. Virtuous War. The Suma Republic is at war with the Asavean archipelago. The two nations, separated by the western Sea of Salt, had been at each other's throats for years. The Asavean plenum once ruled Suma as a satrapy. Inspired by the Seven Virtues and the Way, the Suma cast off the yoke of foreign tyranny and drove the Asaveans into the sea. Ever since, they have been locked in mortal conflict, not least because the Suma absolutely despise the priests of the Asavean archipelago and their veneration of false gods, the worst kind of idolatry. Neither side seems able to deliver a decisive blow to the other, however. The Asavean navies have the upper hand at sea, regularly threatening Sumash ports and occasionally launching vicious raids along the coast. The Suma, in turn, have the advantage when it comes to fighting on land, but as they have no way to get their armies to the archipelago, they are forced into a defensive position. Instead, they try to spread the way in Asavea and occasionally manage to fund an uprising or rebellion, although to date such uprisings have been brutally put down by the plenum. Following the destruction of Chaloncio, in which Suma soldiers played a significant role, the conflict has heated up dramatically. In addition to a short-lived blockade, thwarted with aid from Imperial fleet captains, the Asaveans have launched several major raids against the northern coast of Suma and actively attack Suma vessels wherever they can find them. It seems that the plenum has pledged to continue this attack until they have exacted appropriate retribution, presumably burning a Suma city, much as they did Sirach. Matters of doctrine. The Suma intend to study the new doctrine of enlightenment before they take an official position on it. The Suma are clear that, just as with the doctrine of the Howling Abyss and the doctrine of the Ancestors, the Houses of Virtue intend to study the new doctrine of enlightenment at length before they take any official position on it. They think it intemperate and hasty to be actively spreading this new doctrine abroad before you have had a decade or more for erudite priests to study it in detail and consider all the possible ramifications, but that undoubtedly reflects the different approach of the synods of the two nations. Ambassador Oxytocin expresses hope that the Empire's decision to again change the doctrines of the faith that have formed the basis of the way for centuries won't lead to people questioning the validity of the remaining doctrines, but they understand that the Empire has made its mind up on this matter, and while they respectfully disagree, they are eager to keep things amicable, if possible. Clearly that will be hard in Sarkafan, where tempers can run hot, but they intend to respond cautiously to any further developments. Oceans and ships. The Suma welcome news that the Imperial Senate has criminalized the Asavean drug Ocean's Caress. Imperial efforts to help block the Asavean blockade of their waters are likewise viewed very favorably. There is an opportunity for the Imperial Synod to offer more aid to the Suma in helping protect their coastal waters. Ambassador Oxytocin is very pleased to hear that the Imperial Senate have chosen to outlaw trade in Ocean's Caress. They describe this narcotic as a vile drug which is innately unvirtuous, and that profits from its sale help enrich the Asaveans and by extension the plenum. More importantly, recent imperial efforts to thwart the Asavean blockade of Zema have been greatly appreciated by the House of the People and the High Houses of Prosperity and Pride in particular. By reducing its effectiveness, Ambassador Oxytocin believes the Empire helped reduce the plenum's enthusiasm for maintaining the costly blockade. While Asavean ships still bedevil Suma vessels wherever possible, they are now doing so in a much more haphazard fashion. Combating this menace means that the Frior, the descendants of those pirates converted by Zemrus and now the heart of Suma's naval power, such as it is, are occupied thwarting Asavean malice, but it also means that trade vessels can once again reach Zemeh. There have been numerous statements of principle in the Asavean assemblies praising the courage and loyalty of the freeborn and highborn fleets that helped ships slip past the Asavean net. Indeed, Ambassador Oxytoctin suggests that were Imperial ships to continue to come to the aid of their Suma allies, the House of the People would be sure to find a way to reward their virtue. Such a matter is already being debated by the representatives there, and has the support of both the House of Loyalty and the powerful House of the Way. Initially, only the Freeborn were in a position to aid the Suma, although Highguard used the Partner of Greatness to submit their own response to the situation, and Highborn fleets joined those of the Brass Coast in fighting the Asaveans in the Sea of Salt. This outreach from the Suma Synod, however, presents an opportunity for their Imperial counterparts, specifically the various national assemblies not already involved, as well as for the Assembly of the Way and the General Assembly. Any national assembly might pass the following mandate during the summer solstice. The Suma are our cousins in virtue, and we are united in our shared love for the inspiration of Zemrus. It behooves us to build up our fellows, rather than let them suffer at the hands of hateful idolaters. We send named priest with 50 doses of Liao to urge the sailors and fleet captains of our nation to journey to Suma, in order to help them resist the depredations of Asavean pirates and privateers. Synod mandate any national assembly. If a national assembly enacts the mandate, then the fleet captains of their nation will be able to join the efforts in the west to help the Suma resist the Asavean-inspired pirates and privateers. Highguard and the Brass Coast are already involved in that arena, so they do not need to pass this mandate for their fleet captains to continue participating. They may still wish to use suitably worded statements of principle to encourage their captains to continue to aid the Suma, of course. Alternatively, the Assembly of the Way or the General Assembly might pass a more sweeping mandate. The Suma are our cousins in virtue, and we are united in our shared love for the inspiration of Zemrus. The Asaveans are enemies of the Way, whether a pilgrim looks to Timaj or Bastion. In their time of need, let us build up our fellows. We send named priest with 150 doses of Liao to urge the virtuous sailors and fleet captains of the Empire to journey to Suma, in order to help them resist the depredations of Asavean pirates and privateers. Synod mandate, Assembly of the Way or General Assembly. If the Assembly of the Way or the General Assembly passes this mandate, it will provide the opportunity to take part in the fighting in the Sea of Salt to every Imperial nation. If an individual national assembly has also passed the mandate, that fact will be noted by the Suma and by the priests of the appropriate nation, but there will be no need to enact it separately. No Liao will be taken unless for whatever reason the mandate of the Way or the General Assembly fails to be enacted. Arcane Assistance. The Empire has offered to share 4 magical rituals with the Suma. The Suma have asked a conclave order to disseminate Hammers of the Brilliant Shore and Stalwart Stand on Solid Ground. They will provide 10 Liao a season indefinitely for each of these rituals that is sent to them. The Empire has undertaken protracted negotiations to share their magical lore with the Suma. The main sticking point has been the presence of a number of rituals in Imperial lore that are likely to offend the virtuous Praester. Several Suma magicians have warned that the House of Vigilance in particular is likely to respond very poorly to some of the rituals, but an offer to assess Imperial lore to determine the parts of it that are particularly unvirtuous has been politely declined. Rather than grant access to rituals that could cause a diplomatic incident, Ambassador Accolon has offered 4 specific rituals: Forge the Wooden Fastness, Hammers of the Brilliant Shore, Stalwart Stand on Solid Ground, and Mantle of the Golden Orator. Having examined the rituals, Ambassador Oxytoctin politely declines the Wooden Fastness, indicating their belief that it is ill-advised to call on the aid of the Eternals of Spring in this way, as it risks the magicians succumbing to idolatry. They likewise are not interested in Mantle of the Golden Orator. A similar but more powerful ritual is in regular use among Suma magicians. The other 2 rituals related to fortifications, especially Hammers of the Brilliant Shore, are of interest, however. Both would be useful in their ongoing conflict with the Asaveans, and Suma magicians are eager to get their hands on this magical lore. Virtue compels the Suma to offer a gift of their own to match such a generous offer. Expanding on suggestions made by Ambassador Accolon, Oxytoctin has made the following proposal. If a Grand Master of a conclave order will raise the necessary declaration of dissemination to send either ritual text to Suma, then the nation will provide a permanent endowment of 10 Liao each season to that order. They are obviously keen to get either ritual as quickly as possible, but they understand that such things can take time. They are happy to confirm that they will make the endowment of Liao to any order that disseminates either of the 2 rituals, or 20 Liao to one order if a single order does both in the next year. The Liao Trade. The port of Zema is available to Imperial ship captains. The port of Zema is the gateway to Suma for Imperial fleets. Until recently, Suma was a significant source of Liao, being the only other nation outside the Empire that produces the vital spiritual substance in quantities that allow it to be made available for trade. Recent developments, however, have seen significantly less Liao available to Imperial traders. It is not a crime to sell Liao to outsiders. Matters of law are determined by the House of the People, and they so far have not criminalized the trade. But the House of Vigilance has used mandates and statements of principle to heavily discourage sale of the precious commodity in bulk. The civil service believe that this decision has not been universally popular. There has been some opposition from the House of Prosperity in particular. But for now, Imperial captains visiting Zema will find it harder to source Liao. Only a fleet with several upgrades, or that is under an enchantment, will be able to acquire Liao, and in much smaller quantities than before. In its place, they will find ample supplies of Imperial Roserield. Ambassador Oxytoctin is keen to stress that this move is not made out of spite over the ongoing disagreements about doctrine, but suggests rather that the House of Vigilance recognizes that the Republic needs its Liao both to support its people on the ongoing conflict with the Asavean archipelago and to ensure that the Praester have the resources they need for their own missionary work. On an apparently unrelated matter, the last 3 months have seen a serious decline in the number of Suma trading ships visiting Imperial ports. Quite apart from the ongoing problems in the Bay of Katazar, it appears that the House of Vigilance has warned their merchants against trade with the Empire following a timely warning from Ambassador Achelon. A few of the more courageous captains have still risked the journey east, but the brightly coloured sails of Suma trading vessels have been noticeably absent from the docks of Sarvos and Crown's Quay. The burning of Sirach. The Suma have denounced the destruction of Sirach. Ambassador Oxytoctin offers the sympathy of the House of the People to the Brass Coast. Perhaps as a result of their role in breaking the blockade of Zema, when news reaches Timaj of the destruction of Sirach, the Houses of Virtue denounce the destruction of the city in strident tones. They castigate the plenum and the Asavean warships involved, and urge the virtuous to hold their rivals to the north to account. Ambassador Oxytoctin does not promise anything directly, but lets their Imperial opposite number know that when it comes time for the Freeborn to rebuild their ruined city, the House of the People is keen to see if there is any way they can assist. Unfortunately, the state of the war with Asavea means that such support is likely to be more symbolic than economic, but the offer is there. Ambassador Oxytoctin looks forward to hearing from their opposite number if they have any suggestion of ways the Suma Republic might show their support for and sympathy with the Freeborn. After all, the Suma know firsthand the pain of having their cities burned by Asavean criminals. Appropriate apology. The Suma are seeking Imperial permission to present Ambassador Achelon with a personal gift by way of apology for the nation's failings. They won't act without a motion in the Imperial Senate or a letter from the throne assenting to the gift. The problems at the most recent meeting of the Liberty Pact were compounded by mistakes made by the Suma representatives. The Suma were chairing the forum call to discuss changes, and their delegate opted to exclude Achelon, the long-standing Imperial ambassador to the Suma Republic, from the meeting. The Empire protested that decision, and a subsequent investigation by the Suma concluded that the decision was a mistake that displayed a profound lack of both pride and prosperity. It is clear that the Suma feel deeply shamed by this mistake. Ambassador Oxytoctin has requested permission from the Imperial Senate to be allowed to present Ambassador Achelon with a gift as a personal apology to them. Unfortunately, the High House feel they require the approval of the Imperial Senate to make this gift. Since the Imperial Ambassador to Suma is appointed by the Imperial Senate, there are significant concerns that any gift could be misinterpreted as a bribe of some kind. Given the mistakes they seek to rectify, they are not prepared to risk anything that might sully the virtuous reputation of the Ambassador in this way. Thus, they don't feel they can present their gift while the Ambassador remains in post, without a formal motion of the Imperial Senate indicating approval. To avoid any possible implication of impropriety, they have politely petitioned the Imperial Senate to grant formal approval of this personal gift. Thus far, the Senate has not done so, either because of concerns about the appropriateness of a foreign nation giving a valuable gift to one of the Empire's ambassadors, or perhaps more likely because it has been too busy to spare a Senate motion to deal with the matter. Despite this, the Suma have continued to raise the issue of the outstanding apology every season. In recent communications, there has been a tentative suggestion that Emperor Vesna could grant the Suma request by letter, but to date they have not yet received either. They continue to ask that either the Senate or the throne grant them permission to present the ambassador with their gift. Inspiration. Ambassador Achelon has invited the Suma to send delegates to the Empire to discuss the recognition of Amica and Alberto Akai. Their representative, Uttradare Tipoa of the High House of Wisdom, hopes to arrive in Anvil at Saturday, 2 p.m. On a different matter, but one that has equal import to the two nations, the Suma Synod has been invited to send a delegation to the Empire to consider the recognition of the Asaveans Amica and Alberto Acai. The Imperial Synod began the process of recognizing Amica as an exemplar at the spring equinox, and the final decision will be made by the General Assembly during the upcoming summit. Ambassador Achelon has reached out to the Suma and invited them to send a delegation to Anvil to discuss the potentially contentious decision to recognise an Asavean as an inspiration. Travel is difficult at the moment, but the Suma are always keen to discuss the way and the exemplars and paragons that inspire people to follow it. They plan to send a delegation to Anvil if possible to discuss the two figures, credited with inspiring a short-lived rebellion against the Asavean plenum with imperial priests. The leader of the delegation, who will certainly be attending Anvil, is Utradari Tepoa the Insightful. Tepoa has visited the Empire before, most notably conducting the ultimately favourable inquisition of the Bone Walls, Cole and Wreck, and is known to Achelon. She has sent ahead words expressing favourable anticipation at meeting the ambassador again, at around 2 p.m. Saturday, if all is well. Ripped away, Necropolis. A mob of wreckers has taken one of the Sumash delegates and are planning on sacrificing them to Siaka. This skirmish is a combat highly likely encounter. The ambassador to the Suma Republic is responsible for stopping the wreckers. The Swift Eagle, one of the ships from Suma bringing delegates to speak on the matter of Amica and Alberto Acai, has been boarded and run aground in Long Beach. The majority of the crew were thrown overboard in a frenzy of violence, but Cowie Talek, a priest, was seen bound and dragged along by a mob of the Children of Rex, the name taken by the loose alliance of those that follow High Priestess Shivarn, as they came ashore. Cowie Talek is a promising up-and-coming leader in the Suma Republic, a galvanizing spark in the ongoing struggle against Asavea, and their loss would be a tragedy. Oxytocian, censor of wood, metal and stone, of the High House of Pride, asks that the ambassador to the Suma Republic rescues Cowie Talek and returns them to Anvil through the Sentinel Gate. It is the responsibility of the ambassador to the Suma Republic, Achelon of Felix's Watch, to stop the wreckers and rescue Cowie Talek. Utradari Tepoa of the High House of Wisdom understands the vagaries of fate that surround the Sentinel Gate and would be happy to anoint Achelon if he chooses to lead the rescue himself. The civil service would like to remind Achelon that as the priest is not an imperial citizen, it will require a performance of the Cuckoo's Egg to allow them to travel through the Sentinel Gate.